Welcome to 2022, or as I like to call it, the year of the buyout, because it seemed like every week some game company was being acquired by another company. The biggest acquisition, ironically, was the one that ended up never happening, because on January 18th, Microsoft announced that it wanted to acquire Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the United States Federal Trade Commission, they weren't really feeling the whole idea, so they're now seeking to block the deal, meaning only time will tell if Microsoft will own some of the biggest game franchises in the world, like Overwatch, World of Warcraft, and even Call of Duty. We start off the year with Konami pulling the most alpha move ever and surprise dropping Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, a free-to-play online simulator for their incredibly popular trading card game. The game was a massive success thanks to it being surprisingly free-to-play friendly. It satisfied current players, attracted new players, and it even brought back old players. Until the old heads realized, no, summoning Legion and placing down a trap card can't compete with the modern 5 Omni-Negate Drytron board with hand traps and follow-up for next turn. Yu-Gi-Oh! Wasn't the only big series for 2000s kids to get a game in January, because Nintendo's favorite cash cow, Pokemon, got Pokemon Legends Arceus. Despite the National Pokedex debacle of Sword and Shield and the recently released Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl not really impressing anyone, Legends Arceus was a pleasant surprise for fans in that it did something no one ever expected from Pokemon. It tried something new, being an open world game. Of course we can't end off the first month of the year of buyouts without another big buyout. Microsoft's rival Sony swooped in and stole Microsoft's ex-girlfriend when they announced that they were going to be buying Bungie, the creators of Microsoft's iconic Halo franchise. February, despite being the shortest month of the year, was arguably the most jam-packed month of the year besides November, which we'll get to later. First off, we got the long-awaited Dying Light 2 Stay Human. The game reviewed pretty well thanks to its parkour and combat, but there was quite a bit of criticism due to the buggy state it was in when it was launched. This month also gave us OlliOlli World, the third game in the indie skateboarding series created by Rule 7. The skateboarding genre as a whole has seen something of a resurgence in the past few years, which I'm pretty happy about. OlliOlli World is a super fun game that gives you so much freedom in all the different tricks and moves you can pull off to go for a high score in the large variety of really tightly designed levels. The game also has a great customization feature and music that's a total vibe. If your vibe is masochism, then Slow Clap has you covered with Sifu, the game that reminded you that it is legally okay for you to make a ball-bustingly hard game if your name isn't From Software. Sifu is a roguelite action game where you play as a martial artist trying to take down the people responsible for his father's death. The catch is, when you die, you don't actually die, and instead you come back to life just a little bit older. The older you get, the stronger your attacks get, but the weaker your body gets until eventually you gotta retire, causing a true game over. It's a super difficult but really rewarding game. SNK fans rejoice because instead of getting the 732nd Neo Geo game released on Switch, they got King of Fighters 15 with glorious rollback netcode. One of Sony's newest series, Horizon, got its second entry with Horizon Forbidden West, a beautiful open world game that makes me wonder if video game graphics have gotten too good. I mean, I remember thinking back then video games would never look better than The Last of Us, but we'll get to that series soon enough. For now though, we gotta move away from PlayStation and instead to PC, or should I say tablet? I'm not really sure what to call it, but Valve's Steam Deck console finally released. The Steam Deck is basically Valve's version of Nintendo Switch, being a portable console that can be docked, turning it into a home console, though the Steam Deck's dock does have to be bought separately. This wasn't Valve's first attempt at a console. Remember the Steam Machine? No? Well, the Steam Deck was a much bigger success, allowing you to play Steam games on the go. While we still didn't get the Cuphead DLC that they said would come out in 2019, however that will come out a little bit later in the year, but we did get a Cuphead animated Netflix series. Cuphead's entire identity is rooted in animation history, so making a cartoon it makes sense. Nothing else really important came out in February, but March started off with a bang because we got Aperture Desk Job. Essentially, this was to the Steam Deck what Wii Sports was to the Wii, a great showcase of all of its features. It's a cute little tech demo filled with fan service for Portal lovers. It's only about 20 or so minutes long, but it has great voice acting, humor, and... Oh wait, apparently I missed the game at the end of February? Oh yeah, Elden Ring. 10 out of 10, game of the year, over 17 million copies sold. Yeah. You guys get the picture. Now, on to what you guys really want to hear about. GTA 5 on next-gen consoles. This game it won't die. Whether it's remasters on new consoles, DLC updates, or the GTA roleplay server revolution, GTA 5 just continues to maintain its relevance 9 years after its initial release on PS3 and Xbox 360. Fans of strategy RPGs rejoiced as March also gave us Triangle Strategy, something of a spiritual successor to the fan-favorite Final Fantasy Tactics series. If you prefer your games fast-paced instead of slow and tactical, then PlayStation's signature racing series developed by Polyphony Digital, Gran Turismo, scratched that itch with its latest entry, Gran Turismo 7. Unfortunately, the game caught a bad case of the money-grubbing flu because the microtransactions were actually jaw-droppingly ridiculous. The game uses an in-game currency called credits. One of the cars in the game is the McLaren F194, the McLaren F1 being a sort of grail in the sports car enthusiast community as far as I'm aware, and the car costs 18,500,000 credits, which in real cash is about $185. And that's not even the most expensive car in the game. Nearly $200 for a fake car in a video game. Now, you can get credits by playing the game normally, but you'll have to spend several hours grinding. But the kicker is, in one of the game's updates, they actually made grinding worse by reducing the amount of credits you got, further incentivizing buying credits with real money. It was eventually patched to make grinding more viable, but at that point, the damage was already done. To balance out blatant corporate greed, we got an indie passion project by Andrew Schuldice called Tunic, which is something of a modern take on the first Legend of Zelda game. The game is very cryptic and open-ended, leaving much up to the player to figure out. However, the really interesting thing about the game is that you can find pieces of the game's manual all over the world. And just like with Zelda and old NES games, the manual has tips, tricks, and secrets to help you get through the game. While Tunic was bringing back the feel of old-school console games, Konami reminded us that arcade games aren't dead with a new update to Dance Dance Revolution cabinets, DDR Ace 3. This update has some great quality of life improvements like being able to switch between single and double play mid-session, and of course, a ton of new songs were added, with the total number of songs now being over 1,000. One of the new songs they added was the legendary Megalovania by Toby Fox. We've talked about console games and we've talked about arcade games, but old school PC game fans got a new mini console this year because, yeah, I guess that trend is still a thing. The A500 Mini, a mini console version of Commodore's 1987 Amiga A500 home computer. The console has 25 pre-installed games, but you can also load your own games onto the system too via USB. I'll be honest, I'm a complete noob when it comes to this thing. I've only heard of like 3 games out of the 25 included ones, so yeah. Instead, let's talk about a game from a franchise that I'm actually really familiar with, Kirby, because Kirby got its first true 3D adventure game in Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This is a game fans have been waiting for since the late 90s, but thankfully it was worth the wait, being a fun 3D platformer with a neat ability progression system, cool levels, and nightmarish horrors. Unfortunately, March ended off with sad news as we learned that E3 2022 was cancelled. E3 was like Hanukkah for gamers, multiple days of back-to-back reveals of the hottest and spiciest new games, with my personal favorite E3 being E3 2010. COVID was a huge blow to E3, but you also have to keep in mind tons of companies have started doing their own presentations like Nintendo's Directs and Sony's States of Play, so it seems like there really isn't a need for E3 anymore. We start off April with LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, a complete remake, reimagining of the old LEGO Star Wars games. No, the Clone Wars doesn't exist, along with the missing episodes 8 and 9. While not a video game, we did get the best opening weekend for a video game movie ever in Sonic 2, which built upon the already pretty good first film to give us a great movie, which will definitely become a cinematic universe with a Vector the Crocodile TV series and a Mighty and Ray Buddy Cop movie inevitably being made. Panic, the publishers of Firewatch and Untitled Goose Game, gave us a very unique handheld console called the Playdate, a rather expensive but pretty neat little console with a hand crank on its side. Free downloadable games were released for the thing every week from April to July 2022. The long-awaited Postal 4 No Regrets came out after the disappointing Postal 3, but 4 was also poorly received due to performance issues and bugs. Postal was very much a love it or hate it series thanks to its off-the-wall and offensive humor, and unfortunately this one lands closer on the latter side. 9 years after the original original game came out, the Stanley Parable got an expanded edition, remake, reimagining, I don't know, called the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, which brings back the snarky humor and meta commentary of the first game, as well as the iconic narrator. We finally got Rogue Legacy 2, a sequel to Rogue Legacy, one of the most unique roguelites in the past decade, where when you die, you play as one of your previous character's descendants. We end April off with Nintendo Switch Sports. I mean, a spiritual successor to Wii Sports is nice and all, but I'm just wondering when we're gonna get 1-2 Switch 2. I need more marble guessing minigames, guys. May was a pretty quiet month. We got the second chapter of the new hit horror game Poppy's Playtime, a cool choice-driven indie game in Citizen Sleeper, and a new asymmetric multiplayer horror game along the lines of Friday the 13th and Dead by Daylight and Evil Dead the game. Oh, and EA dropped its FIFA license. EA decided to bet on themselves and create a new soccer series called EA Sports FC. Only time will tell if EA needs the FIFA branding to make a successful series. June was an interesting month. We finally got another Mario Strikers game, albeit with quite a big absence of content. Supermassive Games dropped The Quarry, a spiritual successor to their interactive horror game Until Dawn, where you control 9 different survivors and try to make it to the end of the game with as many of them alive as possible. It also has a multiplayer option where different people can control the individual characters. Neon White, an indie game by Angel Matrix, lets you feel like a speedrunner, and Cuphead's DLC, The Delicious Last Course, lets you feel like you were getting your teeth smashed in. Arc System Works gave us another fighting game in DNF Duel, co-developed along with Aiding and Neopol. If you prefer to fight alongside your friends though, then TMNT Shredder's Revenge has you covered. A great combo-fueled beat-em-up featuring music from the insanely talented Sonic Mania composer, T. Lopes. The pizza party doesn't end here, because this month also gave us another game in the Jackbox Party Pack series, the Jackbox Party Starter. I don't know why they didn't just call this the Jackbox Party Starter Pack, but anyway, Jackbox Party Packs are a series of minigame collections meant to bring friends and family together, with the coolest feature being the ability for participants to play the game with their phones. The Jackbox Party Starter, instead of including 5 games, has 3 fan favorite titles. Not a bad idea, considering like with any minigame collection, some minigames are bound to suck, so having all the best ones at a discounted price ain't too bad. I'm still hoping one day Jackbox just lets us buy the individual minigames. Probably the biggest news in gaming this month was the launch of the new PlayStation Plus in the US and Europe. Sony's attempt at revamping their PS Plus membership with a brand new 3-tier system. PS Plus Essential if you're basic and like having money, PS Plus Extra if you like taking half measures, and the best one for only the tip-toppest of gamers, PS Plus Premium if you know the numbers on the back of your mom's credit card. July was a good month for fans of the old school platformer Klonoa, as that game got its first new release in 14 years with Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series, remasters of the first game and Klonoa 2. If you like platformers but Klonoa ain't your thing, then we also got the new hit indie game of the year, Stray, a platformer where you play as a cat in a futuristic city. Despite the weird premise, or well, because of it, the game blew up, with the game even winning Best Indie Game of the Year at the Game Awards, but we'll get to that later. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 came out, which, while well received as a great RPG, it unfortunately reminded us that the Switch is a very rapidly aging piece of hardware, as the developers Monolith Soft had to do some technological wizardry just to get the game to run at 30 FPS. It's clear that it's time for Nintendo to give us more powerful hardware. Nintendo had a big news story themselves, as they announced the 3DS and Wii U eShops would finally be shutting down, making it impossible for you to purchase digital games from their online storefront. Now, the 3DS and Wii U weren't Nintendo's most popular consoles, but both consoles still have a ton of great titles, specifically a ton of virtual console games that Nintendo has yet to release on the Switch. Now on to August. As we make it into the latter half of the year, and as we start getting closer to Black Friday and eventually Christmas, we start seeing a bunch more releases. We got a Saints Row reboot that launched in an embarrassing state. Randomly, another Kirby racing game came out, Kirby's Dream Buffet, although it's completely different from the last Kirby racing game. Rollerdrome is another game developed by Roll7, but this game is a kinetic blend between skating games like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Jet Set Radio, along with shooters like Doom and Max Payne. Rollerdrome originally began as a game made by solo dev Paul Rabbit for YouTuber Game Maker's Toolkit's 48-hour GMTK 2017 Game Jam. Megami Tensei fans were reminded that their franchise existed with Soul Hackers 2. Then Megami Tensei fans were reminded why their existence is suffering when they saw that the game launched with story content locked behind Day 1 DLC. If you ever dreamed of having your own cult, then don't worry because Cult of the Lamb has you covered. If you prefer your games to be a little less demonic, then this year also gave us a remake of the classic 3D platformer Pac-Man World in Pac-Man World Re-Pac. Probably the most hyped game this month though was MultiVersus, the next Smash Bros. Killer. Every once in a while we get a Smash Bros. Clone that inevitably ends up forgotten in MultiVersus. Yeah, same thing happened. It had a lot of promise being a crossover fighter with some legendary Warner Brothers characters like Tom and Jerry, Batman, Shaggy, and LeBron James.
What the
The game has a fun little distraction, but it lacks the depth and polish that makes Smash Bros. Awesome, meaning competitive gamers probably won't enjoy this one much once you get past the Ultra Instinct Shaggy memes. And casual fans won't get too much out of this as the game's free-to-play model unfortunately means if you want to get a ton of content out of this thing, you gotta pick between a ton of microtransactions or a ton of grinding. September is when things really start to heat up. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R, an updated re-release of JoJo All-Star Battle on the PS3. Freedom Planet 2, a sequel to the Sonic-like indie game. Gundam Evolution, a reboot for the classic point-and-click adventure series Monkey Island called Return to Monkey Island. Skateboard Simulator Session Skate Sim, the third game in Nintendo's new hit series Splatoon. Tim, a Pokemon-like MMORPG. The Last of Us came out. No, The Last of Us. No, The Last of Us. Oh, there we go. Probably the biggest gaming news this month, though, was the big GTA 6 leak. I gave up on this game even ever happening at this point, but yeah, it's happening. And a lot of gamers learned that, yes, early development footage of games don't look as good as fully completed products. I'm not gonna show any footage, I'm not gonna talk about what was in the leaks, and in fact, I'm not gonna talk about this anymore at all because the Rockstar Ninjas are probably on the way to my house right now. Anyway, Google announced that Stadia was dead. Oh, no one cares? Oh, okay, anyway. October, the month of spooky, scary stuff. Fitting because we got a Dragon Ball Z horror game, Dragon Ball The Breakers. Another asymmetrical multiplayer game where one player plays as a monster and the other players have to run from them. Marvel Snap, a free-to-play Marvel trading card game that exists for some reason. Call of Duty dropped a remake to the ever-beloved Modern Warfare 2. Jackbox gave us their yearly release with Party Pack 9. Oh, and we got another mini console, this time from a company I'm a bit more familiar with, Sega, and their Sega Genesis Mini 2. You might be asking why you would get this if you already have the first Genesis Mini? Well, this one comes with Sega CD games, so you can play Sonic CD and Echo the Dolphin CD, if you're that kind of guy. Overwatch 2 came out this month, and by Overwatch 2, I mean Overwatch 1. Another Mario and Rabbids game came out because I guess memes never die. Bayonetta 3 came out, but I'm pretty sure more people were interested in the controversy surrounding the voice actor than actually playing the game. November is always the craziest month for gaming with tons of new big releases, like Goat Simulator 3. The 9th generation of Pokemon started with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, continuing the Pokemon trend of everyone saying how bad the game looks and how lazy Game Freak are, only for them to buy the game anyway. A new console was released, the Evercade EXP, a handheld console that plays cartridge games, with the primary focus being on retro games. This game system doesn't actually play old game carts if that's what you're wondering, but it does have its own cartridges you can buy. Sonic Frontiers, the long-awaited open-world Sonic game. The game has its issues, but it's still a fun time. Come on, just let Sonic fans have this one, okay? This is what we're used to. The biggest new game of November, though, was easily God of War Ragnarok, sequel to the 2018 reboot of the God of War series, God of War. Ragnarok blew players away not just with its fantastic presentation and absolutely hype fights, but also with its really engaging story filled with characters who change and develop throughout the game's narrative. While not a game, we did have more news in the video game movie world with the official trailer for the Super Mario Bros. Movie. We did get a teaser trailer in October, but it didn't really show off too much. This trailer, though, got a lot of people hyped. The voice actors are great, the movie has tons of references to Mario's history, and it just seems like a fun ride. Well, it's time to wrap things up with December. December isn't usually as big as November. Most game companies want their games out before Black Friday, but it still was pretty eventful. Hello Neighbor 2, River City Girls 2, one of my favorite games as a teenager, Crisis Core, finally got a remake. Marvel dropped a tactical RPG? Okay. Fortnite began its 4th chapter, whatever that means. High on Life is a game made by Rick and Morty co-creator Justin Roiland and the game company he founded, Squanch Games. It's a comedy game, so how much you like it is probably based on if it gels with your sense of humor. The Callisto Protocol is a fantastic looking space survival horror game directed by Glenn Schofield, the co-creator of the Dead Space franchise. And this game has the esteemed honor of a mixed rating on Steam. Also, we had the Game Awards, a big moment every year in gaming when we get new trailers for upcoming games and awards go to the best games that year, with Elden Ring winning it all as Game of the Year. Oh, wait, sorry, I think I made a mistake here. Oh, sorry, it actually went to Bill Clinton. We got ourselves a Christmas miracle because on Christmas Eve there was news of a Rayman 4 leak. At least Rockstar isn't alone this year. But without a doubt, the biggest news of December that acts as a great way to end off the year: Mario Kart 7 finally got an update. It's been 10 years since the last one, and you might be wondering, oh, did they add in, new characters, new courses, or new modes? No. Well, guys, that was the recap for gaming in 2022 in 22 minutes. I specifically didn't mention games that were announced or got trailers, so don't go tell me about Tears of the Kingdom in the comments. I did decide to include games like Postal 4 and Temtem because even though they were in early access, they did get their official releases in 2022. Obviously, I couldn't talk about everything in detail, and there's obviously some stuff I didn't mention, but hey, there's only so much you can talk about in a 22-minute recap. This year was insane, and I'm hyped for what's to come in 2023.